Am I the jerk for refusing to hand over my restaurant savings to my sister and getting kicked out because of it? Let me take you on this roller coaster of a journey, one that shattered my family bonds but also freed me to chase my dreams. At 25 years old, I had spent 7 long years scraping together every penny I could, determined to open a small restaurant. It wasn't just a goal, it was my dream. From juggling part-time jobs in college to hustling full-time afterward, every sacrifice was worth it. And finally, after relentless saving, I had amassed $75,000, a small fortune to a budding chef with big ambitions. My parents knew about my dream, but they always brushed it off, treating it like a childish whim I'd eventually outgrow. Living with them rent-free had been a pragmatic choice to reach my goal faster, but now I wonder, should I have moved out sooner? My younger sister, on the other hand, was the apple of their eye. At just 19, she was everything I wasn't: brilliant, popular, and accomplished. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I often felt like a shadow, just there to highlight her brilliance. Last month, she received her crowning achievement, acceptance into an Ivy League program for her master's degree. My parents were ecstatic, practically glowing with pride. But their joy quickly became my nightmare. One evening, they called a family meeting. I thought we'd be celebrating my sister's acceptance, but what they unveiled left me speechless. They wanted me to hand over my entire $75,000 savings, yes, every last cent, for her education. My dream, my years of sacrifice, my hard-earned future, all gone in an instant. My sister, sitting smugly, already seemed to know what was coming. My parents, on the other hand, looked at me with hopeful expectation, as if I would leap at the chance to throw away my life's work. When I didn't immediately agree, my mom launched into an impassioned plea about the importance of education and how this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for my sister. My dad followed suit, invoking family loyalty and insisting that I had a duty to support her dreams. But what about my dreams? Didn't they matter? Was my hard work worth nothing? I tried to explain how much this money meant to me and how close I was to achieving my goal, but their faces darkened. The shift was instant and brutal. My mom began to cry, accusing me of selfishness, while my dad's anger boiled over. He shouted that I was betraying the family, his voice shaking with indignation. Meanwhile, my sister sat silent, her entitlement palpable. She didn't utter a word to defend me or suggest finding another solution. It was as if she believed she was owed my savings, simply because she existed. As the argument escalated, they pulled every guilt trip imaginable. My parents dredged up every supposed sacrifice they'd ever made for me, conveniently forgetting the countless chores and house maintenance I had done to earn my keep. When I suggested alternatives, like student loans or deferring her education for a year to save money, they exploded. How dare I suggest my sister struggle or delay her golden path? My dad declared that loans were too risky, and my role as the older brother was to provide. Hours passed, the shouting relentless. They unearthed every perceived flaw, every mistake I had ever made. Each insult was a dagger, each comparison to my sister a painful reminder of how little they thought of me. Then came the ultimatum: hand over the money or leave the house. I had 24 hours to decide. That night was agony. Should I surrender my dreams for the sake of keeping peace with my family? Or stand my ground and risk losing them forever? By morning, I knew what I had to do. With a heavy heart, I began packing my things. My parents were stunned. They had truly believed I would cave. As I loaded my car, my mom made one last desperate attempt. She warned that I was making the biggest mistake of my life and that I'd regret it forever. My dad stood at the window, his face a mask of disappointment. My sister finally spoke, but only to call me selfish, claiming she always knew I didn't care about her. Her words cut deeper than I expected, but I couldn't betray myself. I couldn't set myself on fire to keep her warm. Driving away from my childhood home, I felt a storm of emotions: anger, sadness, fear, but also a glimmer of relief. For the first time, I had stood up for myself. The days that followed were difficult. I stayed with a friend while searching for an apartment, my phone lighting up with endless calls and messages from my parents. Their words swung between guilt trips and tirades until I finally blocked them for my peace of mind. Word spread to extended family, and opinions were divided. Some supported me, condemning my parents' unreasonable demands, while others labeled me selfish and ungrateful. Amid the chaos, I found a small apartment and threw myself into planning my restaurant. It wasn't easy, but for the first time, I was free to pursue my dreams on my terms. Would you have done the same? Or would you have chosen the family over your future? The moment I decided to take control of my life, it felt exhilarating, a strange mix of freedom and fear. For the first time, I was steering my own course, every decision fully my own. Weeks blurred into months, and I heard through the grapevine that my sister had chosen to defer her admission for a year to save up money. A flicker of vindication sparked within me, but it was quickly eclipsed by sadness. How had it come to this? My parents made sporadic attempts at reconciliation, but always with strings attached, conditions that demanded I give up my hard-earned savings to fund my sister's ambitions. I stood my ground, resolute in my choice, though it fractured our bond further. As the weeks turned into 6 long months, the distance between us grew like an unbridgeable chasm. Yet, amidst the turmoil, there were glimmers of hope. I was on the verge of signing a lease for a modest space to launch my dream, a small restaurant. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning, a tangible step toward the life I envisioned. Each stride forward reassured me that I had made the right decision. But late at night, when the day's excitement faded, doubt crept in like an unwelcome shadow. Had I been selfish? Could I have sacrificed more for my sister? Was cutting ties with my family the only way? The questions gnawed at me in the quiet hours. Yes, my parents' behavior had been manipulative. Yes, my sister had acted entitled. But they were still my family. Despite everything, part of me missed them. Was there a better way I could have handled it all? The thought spun in endless loops until I saw clarity by sharing my story. The response was overwhelming. Readers offered support, raised questions, and shed light on patterns I hadn't fully acknowledged. Looking back, I saw it too, years of subtle favoritism, small sacrifices expected of me, all culminating in this blatant demand for $75,000. My sister's undergraduate education had been covered by a mix of parental savings and scholarships. This master's program? A sudden, unplanned expense my parents wanted me to shoulder entirely. They weren't struggling financially, they simply refused to dip into their own savings or retirement funds. The cultural expectations in our family were clear: older siblings often help younger ones. But this was beyond reasonable. Even so, doubt lingered. Should I have offered a smaller amount to keep the peace? Perhaps, but my parents' all-or-nothing stance left no room for compromise. My focus shifted to the restaurant, fusion cuisine blending my cultural roots with local flavors. It was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. Slowly but surely, things began to fall into place. Contact with my sister remained strained. My attempts to reach out were met with cold responses, and I felt the weight of her blame for the disruption to her plans. Meanwhile, my parents painted me as the villain, accusing me of abandonment. The hurt was sharp, but I directed my energy toward progress, pouring myself into renovations and menu planning. Then came the unexpected. Out of the blue, my sister replied to a heartfelt email I had sent, her words a tangle of anger, confusion, and vulnerability. She admitted to feeling torn, resentful over losing the opportunity one denied her, yet uneasy about our parents' tactics. To my surprise, she suggested we meet in person to talk. As for the restaurant, it officially opened 4 months ago. It's a cozy spot with a menu that tells a story, weaving together the flavors of my heritage and the local community. While profits aren't huge yet, we're breaking even and building a loyal base. I've hired a small but dedicated team, and every grueling, 14-hour day feels worthwhile. Then, just yesterday, a moment I could never have predicted. While prepping for dinner service, the familiar chime of the doorbell interrupted me. "We're not open yet," I called out, distracted. But then, a voice I hadn't heard in what felt like ages: "I'm not here as a customer." I froze. Turning, I saw her, my sister. She looked different. Tired. Less polished. For a few heartbeats, we just stood there, the silence thick with unspoken words. Finally, she broke it. Her voice was quiet, hesitant. "I need a job," she said. "Do you have any openings?" I was stunned. Of all the scenarios I had imagined, this was the last one I expected. My sister stood there, hesitant yet determined, and for the first time in months, we sat down to talk. The words tumbled out of her, a blend of regret, frustration, and vulnerability. She explained how her plans had unraveled. Deferring her Ivy League admission to work and save money had seemed like a solid strategy, but reality had other plans. Jobs in her field were scarce without the master's degree she'd been banking on, and the struggle had taken its toll. Our parents? Still furious with me. They blamed me for ruining her chances at a top-tier education and had been relentless in pressuring her to find a high-paying job. The weight of their disappointment had become unbearable. A month ago, she'd moved out, escaping the suffocating atmosphere of their expectations. As she spoke, I noticed how much she had changed. The arrogance I'd once associated with her was gone, replaced by a quiet humility I never thought I'd see. Then came the words I never thought I'd hear. She admitted she had been wrong to feel entitled to my savings and wrong to let our parents pit us against each other. She even regretted not standing up for me during that explosive family confrontation. Listening to her, I felt a pang of sadness. Sadness for the time we'd lost, for the fractured state of our family, and for how things had spiraled so far out of control. She asked for a job, her voice tentative and unsure. I told her I'd think about it. But now, I'm torn. Could hiring her reopen old wounds or create new ones? Or is this a chance to mend our bond, to start fresh? I can't help but wonder what our parents would say if they knew she had come to me for help. Is this an opportunity for healing, or am I walking into trouble? After agonizing over it for days, I realized I needed to set boundaries. Mixing family and business right now felt too risky. But our conversations didn't end there. Slowly, we began to rebuild our connection. Through her words and actions, I saw someone who had been humbled by life's challenges, someone who had grown and learned in ways I hadn't anticipated. She spoke candidly about her struggles, working minimum-wage jobs, scraping by, and gaining a newfound respect for hard work and the value of money. Then, one day, she said something that stopped me in my tracks. She told me she finally understood why my dream of opening a restaurant meant so much to me. She'd seen the effort, the sacrifice, and the passion I'd poured into it, and she respected it in a way she never had before. That admission touched something deep within me. It reminded me of the bond we once shared, long before the weight of family expectations drove a wedge between us. After a lot of soul-searching, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I told her I would help pay for half of her tuition for the upcoming year. Not the full amount our parents had demanded, but enough to give her a real chance at starting her master's program without drowning in debt. Why? Not out of obligation or guilt, but because I saw a genuine change in her. She wasn't the same person who had stood with our parents demanding my savings. She was someone who had faced hard truths and wanted to make things right. When I told her, she broke down in tears. She hugged me tightly, promising to work part-time to cover her living expenses and to pay me back someday. I smiled and told her the best way to repay me was to make the most of this opportunity. We haven't told our parents yet, and honestly, I'm not sure how they'll react. But this decision isn't about them, it's about us. For the first time in a long time, I feel at peace. My restaurant is thriving. It's small but growing, and I can afford to help her without jeopardizing my dream. Life has a funny way of surprising you, doesn't it? Sometimes, it hands you a chance to rewrite the ending of your story. This is my chance, and I'm taking it.